Hi, welcome to Control Talk. Now your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending March 29th, 2020. This is episode 356, where we talk about all things smart building controls and HVAC controls. And I got to tell you, man, we're going to talk today about a way our industry can help mitigate or maybe even eliminate the coronavirus. But before we do that, let me introduce your host of mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only secret agent man, Kenny Smyers. And Kenny, man, I am so pumped up. One of our guests this week is going to share some stuff with us that I think could be absolutely huge.
Yeah, Eric, it's been hiding in plain sight. Looks like for many years that Luis Malgares we're going to interview him shortly. But I mean, the importance of humidity in public health now, especially in this pandemic crisis. This is remarkable information. This is very important information. This is going to drive a lot of people, catch a lot of attention, and it's very actionable. It tells you exactly what to do, how to do it. Of course, Neptronic, being experts in humidity, selling humidifiers, both the industrial level, commercial level. I don't really think they have a residential product line, but you certainly can take the information that we will provide here in a very short future and use it in your own personal life and your professional life.
Absolutely. And then, Kenny, our second guest, man, I tell you what, he's got a platform and a software that I think is going to revolutionize how we do analytics. So it's exciting stuff. So stay tuned for the rest of the show. You're not going to want to miss this. Again, for our podcast listeners, you might want to go to Controltrends.com and you might want to watch the video because there's going to be a lot of slides and a lot of very good visual information as well. So Kenny Smyers, before we get to all the exciting stuff we got coming up, we had some exciting stuff happening this week on Control Trends.
Yeah, we did, Eric. The COVID-19 pandemic has basically redirected the way we do our daily lives and all the events. We know that if you remain in place, you're doing the best thing you can for yourself and your family and your coworkers. If the virus is locked and not moved, then it can't spread. And we need to be contributing our efforts and our thoughts, help people that need it. But if you don't need to be moving around and socializing, don't, because it's been very convincing, the information that we have, that the virus will die in place. It'll die in that, it'll run its course in that person and not be spread on. So what happened is it's changed our scheduling. So the first big thing that we got is that the Realcomm IBCon 2020 has been rescheduled. It was supposed to be there, April 1st through the 4th. It's now going to be September 1 through the 3rd. 2020 in Miami. It's the same location, the Miami Convention Center. It's going to be a marvelous event. Hopefully we'll be all healed and ready to go, because one thing that we know for sure, that this stimulus package that's coming out is people going to be excited about getting back on track and getting back on track quickly and healing economically. And there's going to be money that's going to be infused into our HVAC building automation world that can really, really make that needle move that we always talk about, getting into the small spaces, but the middle-sized buildings and, of course, the large buildings. But that's the big mention. A call for contributed articles to Project Haystack for their spring 2020 Connections magazines. Project Haystack still out there, working it. They're looking for both contributions for the Spring 2020 Connections magazine and also sponsors. So there's going to be a call for sponsors for Project Haystack. We also have CompuTrolls is coming out with a very interesting sponsor career day, where why consider the building automation industry. This is going to be a webinar that's April 2nd, 2020, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But this is really neat because they also have taken, from their point of view, how we can attract more people into our career fields, which is a very necessary thing. And finally, we had a product release from Lake Spring. They're very excited about their new product announcement, the Genesis Edge 534 4G LTE product.
Very, very cool. Yeah, and just so you know, I did speak with Mark Peacock a little bit earlier today. He's doing fine, but like the rest of us, work as we know it has shifted. It's a little bit different now. But Kenny, I tell you what, without further ado, I really think you talk about maybe the business opportunity of the decade for the people in our industry that can absolutely help this pandemic. And to your point, I don't know why this hadn't come out sooner, but how about introducing Luis, and let's get this started.
I'd love to. Our first guest is Luis Malgares, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Neptronic. Welcome to the show, Luis.
Thanks for taking a few minutes to speak with us, brother.
Good morning, Mr. Stromquist. How are you doing? And first of all, let me ask you a question. How's your family, your friends, and your coworkers doing right now?
Well, you know what? It's it's a little disconcerting. They've closed the schools down, so I am a controls guy and a homeschool teacher, and the family's doing great. I have two small kids, Evie and Axel, and an adult child, Britt. And Britt's doing great. The two small kids are doing great. My wife and I are getting along, thank goodness. I'm kind of reminded of a thing I saw on Instagram, which is, okay, you're going to be quarantined. So here are your choices who you can be quarantined with. A, your wife and children. He goes, B, immediately.
I'll take B.
Yeah, I'll take B. Exactly. Exactly. So I think I'm really fortunate that I love my family. I got a great family, but I can only imagine how horrible it would be to be sequestered with somebody you didn't really like very much.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thanks for asking, Luis. Our family's doing, we're hanging in there. We're doing good. Knock on wood.
Yeah. So how about you, brother? How things going with you?
We're doing good. We're doing good. We're holding the fort right now. So yeah, we're dealing with this. Well, I don't think nobody was seeing it a few months ago, right? But yeah, you got to do the utmost with what you want. It's during challenging times that you actually get to see the best in humans also. So I also keep that faith.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on, Luis, because you and Neptronics have done some research, and actually, I think the HVAC and smart building controls industry has the opportunity to really help head this coronavirus off. So I understand you got a bit of a presentation you'll be able to show us today. So if you don't mind, how about showing us your screen
Sure.
and appreciate you educating us on this.
Good. So as perhaps a lot of people may know, some people know Neptronic we have actually 5 different divisions in our company. As a matter of fact, we can divide them in 3. One of them probably is very well known, which is on the equipment side, the humidifier section. But most of our community most likely knows us much more for the control side. So what we actually did is that we actually started looking and we actually started this this research, I would say probably about 4 months ago, out of pure curiosity on a little paragraph that we saw. And little did we know that this would become such an important thing to actually be talking about today, which actually has to do what is the impact of well-controlled humidity in the building, especially related to how viruses and bacteria actually come into our environment. So what we did is actually we decided to search and we started to document our stuff. And what we actually did is that a few weeks ago, we actually did this presentation for most of the people in our industry. And it's interesting. And first of all, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to actually get to bring this up, especially to people who actually have their hands in this, which is basically the control of the temperature and the humidity in enclosed buildings. So what we decided to do was actually come up with this presentation.
Very cool, Luis.
So if I may, if it's all right with you, let me show you a little bit of the what this presentation is about and how actually having a well-controlled humidity environment actually has a profound impact, especially right now in this period of pandemic crisis. All right.
Excellent.
So what I would like to cover with you guys is, first of all, we have to understand what this thing is. Some people call it virus, some people call it bacteria, microbes, germs. So first thing we want to do is actually understand what exactly is the difference between all of these terminologies. We also have to understand, and this is where it becomes very crucial, how does our body actually defend ourselves against all of these intruders that want to basically harm us. And we're going to talk about the COVID-19. We're going to understand how it correlates to our respiratory epithelium that we have. We're also going to go into a little bit of biology 101. We'll talk about our cilia, how our internal protective systems that we have actually help us always fight back. And we're also going to see the relationship between that and how important it actually is to maintain a proper humidity level. We're also going to talk to you guys about different scientific research and white papers that actually exist out there, just to understand and make all of us a participant in this thing of trying to kill this beast. And we'll also show you where to get the information. And the point we really want to get across is the importance of humidity, not from a comfort perspective, but really about public health and how it actually relates and how we can actually help the people we're supposed to be serving in this environment that we have, which is called buildings. So first thing to understand is the fundamental difference between what is a microbe, what's a bacteria, what's a virus. Well, basically, these things are actually germs. These are external, sometimes living, sometimes non-living organisms that can actually harm us. In some cases, they're beneficial. In some other cases, they're actually non-beneficial. So what's important to understand is that a bacteria is a living organism. First of all, it has only one cell. You can always fight it with antibiotics. And very important to remember is that infections are localized just in one part of the body. The best example of that, if you eat something that is not right, that has a bacteria in it, and you actually digest it, it will affect your digestive system. If you cut yourself, okay, and there's a bacteria in that environment, it will actually penetrate through that opening. That's what's going to be infected, which is very different from a virus. Some bacteria are actually good. Proof of that is that for all of those culinary connoisseurs out there, we all know that cheese, for instance, and yogurt actually comes from good bacteria. And as a matter of fact, there's actually a study out there that proves that on average, every human being, every adult has more or less about good 10 pounds of bacteria in our bodies, especially in our gut, which also means that they also have a proactive result, helping us obviously do what it's supposed to do, which is basically help us digest the food that we have. Very important to remember that is that a bacteria can also split itself as opposed to a virus. Virus, on the other hand, which is basically what the COVID-19 is non-living. And this is where it becomes very important to remember. It actually needs a proper environment for it to actually survive. That's key here, okay? And that's where we're going to draw the attention to. The only way to fight back a virus is through a vaccine. And some viruses cannot be killed with vaccines. So in that case, you actually need to have what we call antivirals. As an example of that, HIV is a antiviral. The HIV actually has an antiviral in order to help people who actually have been infected. In some other cases, some other types of viruses through history have been fought back with vaccines, such as the measles, the varicella, and the polio, and so on and so on. The infection coming from a virus is systemic, which means that it will affect your entire body. It will penetrate through one of the cavities that we have, that we're going to talk about, but it will affect the whole body. In this case, it's actually a respiratory virus, which means it's going to affect your lungs, which is going to hurt, and obviously is going to impede your system from actually breathing properly. Viruses are not beneficial in any shape, form to our body. So that's why it's important to keep them away. And also, very important to remember, because it cannot reproduce by itself, it actually needs to penetrate ourselves through our cells. So far, so good, Eric? Yeah?
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Also, something very important to remember is that a bacteria can move by itself. That's why it has this long tail that actually propels it to be able to be moving in our body, and that's how it actually gets to infect us. A virus actually needs to have somewhat of a transport media in order to actually move. In this case, they're called droplets. When you sneeze, when you cough. So that's why it's important to remember that's the way they travel. Okay? But we'll talk about that with much more detail. So remember one thing very important, bacteria, you can fight them with antibiotics. Virus, you cannot fight them with antibiotics, only with vaccine if you have. In our case, we don't have any. So that's why it's important to understand where we're going with this. So let's go back to Biology 101. How does our body actually fight back? How is it done? Very important to remember, we actually have 3 layers of defense. The first one is thanks to our skin and to the different mucuses that we have in our body. The second one actually has to do with the antimicrobial proteins that our body can generate, and also the inflammatory response it has. Best example of that, just before you start to have a cold, what happens? Your throat starts to ache, right? It starts to inflate. It's an inflammation. That means it's trying to fight something out. And then the third line of defense is when it really gets to be bad. That's when the antibodies kick in. That's when the lymphocytic systems kick in. That's when you start having fevers. That's when the whole artillery comes out in order to fight this thing. But interesting enough, the second and the third level of defense that our body has, these are the ones where typically the medical world actually can tackle and help us with. But the first line of defense, the skin and the mucus, that's where we as an industry have a positive effect and where we can actually make a difference. All right, so let's look at it. Skin, we understand the way it works. We understand also that the skin becomes our first shield of protection for the physical layer that we have, while the mucus is what we call the internal shield that protects the internal part of our body. All right, and when you look at them, both are obviously done pretty much the same way. They all have a sublayer that ends with a upper layer. In the cases of the skin, obviously, it's called the epiderma. And in the case of the human respiratory system, it's actually called different mucosas that we have in our eyes, in our nose, in our mouth. That is why it is so important to, like all the public health agencies have been saying, keep your hands clean. Why? Because if your hands do get the virus on them, by touching your eyes or nose or your mouth, you're gonna actually help it penetrate into your body. Remember what we said, these do not move by themselves. They have to be introduced. And one of the ways they're introduced is through different droplets. You pick up a droplet without noticing, that's how you're gonna introduce this thing into your body, all right? And the important thing here is the following. In order to have healthy mucus, you obviously need a humidity level that is proper. Because what happens, we know this, wintertime, all the people from the northern climates or people who've been to northern climates, in wintertime, our eyes get dry, our nose gets dry, and without a doubt, our mouth also can get very dry, right? So there's a correlation between winter, dry air, and humidity, and also how it affects our mucus system. So let's look at this mucus system, because we said this is one of the first fundamental layers of protection that our body has to fight back these things. When you look at our system, one of the important things to remember is that our mucous membranes are actually the only thing open to the exterior. So these are the things that are protecting us from whatever is trying to come into our body, just like our skin does on the external part. And the most fascinating thing that we have when you start looking into this is, as an example, let's look at the respiratory system that we have and the way it actually moves and actually operates inside of our breathing system. The first layer that you notice is what we call the basement membrane. This is the last lane that we have that you're trying to protect. Why? Because once you penetrate the zone, which is the internal part, that's where all the healthy cells of our body are actually, that's where you actually find them. So that's why it's important to actually always keep protecting the upper layer that are actually towards the right side of this image. So the first thing you will notice are these things called cilia. I don't know how much you guys remember about cilia when we did biology 101 in high school, but cilia are one of the most important things that we have as a way to protect ourselves. Why? Because they're actually hairs. These little hairs are actually holding the mucus layer on top. And what these mucus layers are actually doing is brushing off any type of particulate, any type of germ, any type of virus or bacteria that could fall directly before it actually penetrates our body, just like the skin would do. So the way it actually works is that it actually will move. It will be brushing all those particles away in order for us to actually have it inside of our larynx so we can swallow it. So let's look at the way it actually is built. So here you have a cut through of what the system looks like. You will notice the first thing, the cilia hair, nice little long hairs. On top of it, you see a first layer of mucus. And the one on top is actually the one that's actually being pushed, being brushed off by these hairs, because that's the dynamic effect that they actually have. They are continuously brushing all that dust away, just like brooms do. And when you keep a proper amount of humidity, they actually can do their job properly. So in other words, you actually, if you're giving them the right environment, right temperature, and right humidity, they will do the job. But what happens if you start decreasing the amount of humidity in that given space? A few things will happen. In a good humidity level, there's two layers of mucus. The first layer of mucus is extremely viscous, okay? And the one on top is actually less viscous. So what does it mean? It means that because it's less viscous at the bottom, it's a lot harder for anything that wants to penetrate to actually come in. The mucus that we actually have on top is actually more liquid, has more viscosity. So it's a lot easier when the little hairs are actually doing their job of brushing to actually be pushing it off. As the level of humidity actually starts to decrease, so does the mucus. And by doing so, they also, okay, become more viscous, which means that it actually becomes easier for the bacteria to actually start to penetrate into the epithelium. So do you see the importance of maintaining a good level of humidity at this point?
This is huge, Luis.
Okay.
Very, very huge. Yeah.
So again, just to show you guys just to repeat ourselves, there's a double phenomenon happening at the same time. If you give your body the perfect level of humidity, that means that the height of mucus actually is at its best, all right? If you start to decrease the level of humidity, what happens? Your cilia hair, instead of actually being all straight up, actually literally collapse. And as they collapse, they stop brushing. As they stop brushing, you lose the density of your mucus. As the density of this mucus actually starts to operate, then it's a lot easier for any germ, virus, or a bacteria to actually penetrate into the lower cells that we have. Just to show you a little video, I will show you the first part of the video. You will see the cilia hair actually moving and how they're actually doing their movement of brushing. And the second part, you'll see what happens once they collapse. So here we go. They're doing their job. They're brushing all that mucus. Now suddenly they collapse. It's a lot harder for them to be moving it properly. So imagine for a second that that layer of mucus that you have on top is being washed, literally being brushed away. So there go all those bacteria. There go all those germs that are trying to get into your body. If it actually collapsed, now suddenly you lost your shield. It's a lot easier for them to penetrate. And that's how we get sick.
Yeah, it almost seems, Luis, it's like, taking an air filter out of a unit, right? It seems like it's filtering the crap out.
It's exactly what it is, okay? And the only way you can keep these filters proper, doing their job, is by providing them an environment that actually suits, and you make it easier for them to do their job, which is what they've been doing for centuries, which is basically to protect us, all right? So once again, what happens? We start breathing, chances of any germs floating, coming into our body. Automatically, our metabolism, what it does, it tries to either swallow it, or it will try to cough and sneeze, so to kick it out, right? So again, we're gonna swallow it, or we're gonna kick it out. All that is possible only if we let our body do its job, which is to be brushing away all of these germs through the mucus layer, all right? That's how our body fights it back. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's look at the way this COVID-19 is actually working. Very important to remember, this COVID-19 virus is actually a droplet virus. It's a droplet virus, which means that every time you sneeze, every time you cough, there's actually a particle, a little droplet of water leaving our body. And what do you find in that little droplet? Sugar, salt, and the virus itself. The big advantage we have is that this one, given the fact that it's a droplet, the droplet will actually fall to the ground. But here's the problem we have. If it also falls to the ground, it has a double impact, right? Because there are two ways of contamination. The first one is through what we just said, droplet, and the other one is airborne. And it's also important to understand the difference between these two things. An airborne germ or an airborne virus is when, for example, it is actually so small, it doesn't actually need a droplet to be contaminating other people. Chickenpox, and tuberculosis are an example of that. As we said, in our case, this COVID-19 actually spreads through droplets. That's why all the public safety agencies or health agencies are asking us to keep a safe distance, this social distancing. That's why, because if ever you do cough, you do sneeze, or you actually are just like us trying to say the and pee, well, there's actually little particles that will be flying out of our mouth that can contaminate somebody who's actually healthy. And that's why it's important when it actually falls into a surface, that's where you can start contaminating objects, such as doorknobs. Which brings us to something very, very important here, okay? A recent study showed us that appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine that a virus, depending on the type of surface, can last up to 72 hours in a droplet on that surface. So imagine for a second, you come in, you're sick, you still don't know that you actually have this virus, you sneeze, little droplets fall on the table, you don't even know it. The person who's doing the maintenance of your building comes in, wipes it, goes on its hand, suddenly something happens, his eye is itchy, scratches his eye, beautiful mucus right there, humidity level is low, mucus protection are low. What's going to happen to that person? You just infected him.
Wow.
Okay.
Scary stuff, Luis.
Okay. But like anything else, information is power, right? So what happens? We know how we can actually help to neutralize these droplets. And again, another piece of information that ASHRAE actually has provided us for the longest period of time in their HVAC system and equipment in chapter 22 basically tells us that if you stay within 40 to 60% of humidity, it literally kills the environment for bacteria to actually populate more, or to proliferate. How do you say that in English?
Proliferate.
Exactly. All right. And as you can see on this on this picture here, the same thing actually will also happen with viruses, which are the two major causes. And in this case, it's a virus, right? The COVID-19. So you see, if you keep humidity between 40 to 60%, okay, you will actually not provide this virus the type of environment that it requires in order to keep surviving. We, as an industry who actually has full control of this, need to be aware of what this actually represents. And interesting enough, Eric, this is the time of the year, and ask any of the control guys around, this is the time of year when most of the companies, most of the buildings who actually have humidifiers are starting to shut them down.
Yeah.
Because, oh, we don't need humidity anymore. We can use humidity from the outside. True. There's geographic areas where you can actually do that. But the same could be said for temperature, and yet temperature, we still keep a very strict control level as far as humidity, as far as temperature, to make sure we always keep an optimal set point of temperature. But yet we don't consider humidity the same way. And what these studies are showing us is that it is crucial to maintain a controlled and measure RH in buildings, because this is one of the ways you can actually have a positive impact on providing viruses the wrong environment for them not to proliferate.
Yeah, no, this is huge, Luis. And it looks like if you're between 50 and 70, even for the viruses,
That's right.
Like
So
they don't
depending on
exist
virus.
at all.
But here's another interesting piece of information here, Eric, is that from the same study that ASHRAE did in this chapter 22 of System and Equipment Handbook, it also says that at 50% of humidity, that's where the mortality rate of the certain organism is at its highest, and the influenza virus loses much of its virulence. And in the same chapter, there's also another mention that when you keep humidity levels around 55%, it becomes lethal to a bacteria called the pneumococcus bacteria, which is the streptococcus bacteria. That one that we usually get in wintertime that hurts our respiratory system and our throat, and we keep complaining that it hurts, and you need to take some vaccine for that, and some antibacterial for that. Well, that's at 55% of humidity, it actually kills. You actually can get to kill that bacteria if it's an enclosed environment.
Luis, this is fascinating, and I just wonder why, at least in the States, I'm not hearing any of the news reports talking about humidity as being a way to help control this. Is it hit in Canada at all, or why aren't people talking about this?
Because again, Eric, you have to understand one thing. For the longest period of time, humidity is always correlated to comfort. People do not measure the importance of humidity as being part of public health. So, and again, and I'll tell you this with it's a joke, but at the same time, it reveals to you how serious this is. The example that I used before of saying we're going to shut down humidifiers in winter, that actually came from one of our tech people in our office, who's actually doing tech support for humidifiers, saying, well, it's not important because anyways, they're going to shut them off. So think about it. If our own people who are at the forefront of this battle don't even realize the importance of humidity from a public health perspective, how do you think that most humans actually understand this? And the worst thing is, Eric, and this is the worst thing, and this is where I want to bring everybody, and I want everybody to understand, is that there's thousands of these research done out there. As an example, there's another one here that says that when you use 50%, when you're at 50% humidity, you will kill 100% of the airborne flu viruses within 24 hours.
Wow.
Okay, and if you look at the charts here, this is exactly what you see. As soon as you start hitting 40 to 50% humidity, the level of infection, as you can see, actually starts to drop. Look, on every single them and every type of size and micrometers of dimensions of these viruses. And the thing is, we just said before that another study showed that these viruses can actually live 72 hours on the surface. And this study is telling you that if you keep a well humidified space at 50% humidity, it will kill 100% of the, in this case, airborne flu viruses, but within 24 hours.
Luis, this is phenomenal. You would think you want to make sure the humidity is good in your home too, right?
That's exactly the point, which brings me to the next thing, right? If you want to have access to this information, again, this is, Eric, I mean, there's sometimes it's good to have commercial presentations because people need to understand what we do, how we do it, and why we're so good at it. This case, it goes beyond that. Neptronic, as a manufacturer humidifier, obviously could be claiming here that, yeah, we have the best humidifier for the situation. But what we're trying to get across here is, regardless of the humidifiers that you guys have out there, keep them running, keep controlling them. It is important because this is the way we as a community, from the engineering world, can actually have a positive impact on the health of the people we love in our homes, obviously in our hospitals, but also in our offices where we spend most of our time doing this job, okay? So again, like I said, if you, for instance, just go to Google Scholar and just simply just tap humidity and viruses, you will get over 200 different types of researches that have to do exactly with that will all bring you to the same place, okay? We actually did the same thing on our webpage. We actually put a link just to, for people to understand, just quick, again, scientific research for people to understand. But at the end of the day, the message we want to get across is the following, is that if you keep the level of humidity at 50% in any type of building or any type of enclosed building, it will kill 100% of the airborne viruses within 24 hours. That's where the mortality rate of the virus is at the highest. And that's where it becomes lethal to bacteria to keep living.
Luis, this is phenomenal. Thank you so much for doing this, brother. This is this is encouraging in a time where I think a lot of people are looking for answers and are freaked out. This is something positive they can do. So Neptronics, you guys do sell humidifiers, right? That's one of your divisions. You said
we do. It's one of the divisions we have. And again, and like I said, Eric, the whole point here is that we want people to understand there's a direct correlation between keeping a proper level of humidity. And this is not Neptronic, the manufacturer, saying this.
Right.
Scientific researchers out there all say the same thing. And for reasons we do not understand, it seems that this message is not passing through. So that's why, thank you very much, Eric, for giving us the opportunity to share this information. And I think it's our collective responsibility as people who actually have a positive impact in creating healthy environments for all types of human beings, for all us human beings in this world, that in this environment that we call buildings. We have that responsibility to bring this information to building owners, managers, for them to understand the high importance of keeping buildings humidified, not just for comfort, but for public health.
Luis, this is a great service, and thank you so much for doing this. Again, I want to just take a minute too and just sort of shift gears and talk a little bit about Neptronics, the controls company and the division you work for, as well as make sure that people know that Neptronics.com for your humidifiers as well. But we visited your facility and love the way you guys roll. You guys make great products. But man, this goes beyond this. And I really get that your intent here is from a heartfelt place to really just sort of share. And I've got a buddy whose wife works at the CDC, and I'm going to make damn sure that they know this. I guess they do know it, but why they're not recommending it, again, makes no sense to me at all, because this seems like this, just if they implemented this instead of, the social distancing, but if everybody had to keep their humidity at a 50% relative humidity at 50% level, it seems like you could just really jumpstart getting this thing under control.
That's right. And that's why it's important also to remember that our body does best what it's supposed to do, which is to protect us.
Yeah.
Our body is such a beautiful machine designed for that. The only thing it asks us, just like, for instance, when you want to be healthy, is to eat proper food. But in this case, the only thing our body wants us to do is just provide us with the right temperature and humidity, give us the proper environment in these closed spaces that you have. There's nothing we can do about outside, but at least in these closed environments, let's give our bodies the proper environment, and our body will do what it does best, which is to protect us.
I could tell you something, Luis, and I don't know how it is in Canada, but down here, most of the restaurants, people won't go in the restaurants, and even though they're taking all kinds of precautions, to make sure everything's clean and all, but you start thinking about with this study, if I'm in the restaurant business or the retail business, right, when people are not cleaning my store, I'm going to get hold of this, and I'm going to have a big thing that is showing where my relative humidity is, because it's basically saying that it's not going to survive in there.
That's right. That's right. At least we're doing something. I mean, look, viruses and disease are part of living, but if we can at least not provide them the proper environment for them to keep living, and at the same time give that environment to our body to actually do its job, it's a win-win combination without even having to get the medical world involved.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, all right, buddy. Well, listen. How do people get a hold of you, and how do people get a hold of Neptronics?
Well, very easy. Just go to our website, which is Neptronic, as you said before, neptronic.com, and from there you can either get a hold of me by sending me an email to Luis, Luis @neptronic.com. And let's not forget, we're still a controls company too. So we have a bunch of products out there that are totally related to what's happening right now. So we have fast actuators for lab hoods. We actually have IP65 actuators for, let's say, for outdoor environment or critical setup environments in the health world. We also have static pressure controllers to also help pressurize isolation rooms. So there's a lot of the problems that we actually currently have that are again directly linked to the medical and the public health industry right now, and obviously pharma industry also, right? Because the pharmaceutical also needs humidity and well-controlled temperature.
Well, Luis, thank you so much. I mean, you've done a lot. We've educated our industry and Control Trends community. I'm sending this information to my family across the United States because that's how important I think it is. So thank you very much. Thank you, Neptronic. Well played. Thank you.
Very, very cool, Luis. Again, buddy, thank you so much for doing this.
Eric, I can't thank you enough. And I think at this point, it's our responsibility, it's our collective, individual and collective responsibility to share this information with the people we care for.
Luis Melgares from Neptronics. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thank you so much.
Look, I really don't know how this hadn't come out before, but everything Luis is saying, it's science. You can Google it, you can research it. I would think for, companies that are looking for an edge and want to do something really positive, man, get this out to your customers, get it out to, and see if you can get in and start, selling humidifiers and helping people out, making sure the humidity sensors are working right. Seems like this is just a very simple thing that our industry is uniquely qualified to do.
Well, Eric, you that and the big push, the last ventilation, of course, was big, and then pressurization, room pressure monitoring is critical. And I heard through the grapevine that Dwyer's out of Magna Helix and different people have a run on their products that provide that assurance that there's no the air is being pushed back up and exhausted, not coming back into the affected area is contained so there's a lot of work to be done, but these are great insights, and I think all in all it's going to improve our quality of life.
Absolutely. And it seems like too, Kenny, the other thing is once we get past this, it seems like if the proper authorities realize and owners realize the effect of humidity on not just the coronavirus but viruses in general and bacteria, it seems like this is going to be something that will be an ongoing business opportunity for people in our industry.
I agree. A pivot point of enlightenment. Yes.
Pivot point of enlightenment. There you go, Kenny Smyers. Well, let's pivot point on to our next guest, who I think is very enlightened and is really enlightened us on analytics and what happens with that. So how about introducing him?
Eric, I'd love to. We have a very interesting guest for today's show. We have somebody that's kind of new to the industry, but not 4 years, 5 years in the hurry up offense. They came from the analytic world, the software world, and they're going to talk about an incredible tool. So we'd like to welcome Chris Hollanday, CEO of Resolute Intelligent Buildings, to the show. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh man, we're so glad to have you here. But listen, for our audience who doesn't know, like Kenny said, we've had the privilege of seeing a little bit about what you guys are offering, and it's pretty phenomenal. But for our audience who might not know, tell them about Resolute and what you guys do and kind of why you formed the company and what makes you different.
Yeah. So, like you said in the intro, 4 years ago, we kind of had a dream. A lot of us come from big data analytics backgrounds and software. Primarily, a lot came from a company called CompuWare, in which we built software products that monitored and did performance analytics or insights, as we'll talk about, on computers, on servers, on mainframes, on pieces of code. So we understood kind of that. How do you get data out? How do you analyze it? How do you find anomalies? And then how do you build up an analytics platform on it? And so we started a bunch of little companies through a VC. To kind of just solve different problems with a tool like that, right? And then one of the ones we saw was buildings. And so being really smart guys, we realized we know nothing about buildings whatsoever, right? We don't know. It was like walking in on a time warp a little bit, right? It was, wait a minute, you don't have a standard protocol. You can't just connect into a building. And then we did the next best thing, right? We went and found the smartest integrators we could. And then they educated us on what's out there. How do you do it? What are the struggles you have to even just get data to your front end and run a building, let alone try to get into a cloud app to do anything special with it. And then it was quickly, all right, well, we have this thing, we have this energy or this analytics framework. What do you do with it? Right? What do you do with the data? I can show you charts and graphs, but at the end of the day, that's just charts and graphs. We're not a charts and graphs company. We're an actions and answers company, right? So how can I take data and turn it into something that's actionable in the building? Well, so again, we're a bunch of integrators and software guys. We don't know anything. So let's go find some energy engineers. Let's find people that have M&V experience, build spec experience, people that ran their own service contracts and were contractors. And so you get those guys in a room, and then it's a fight over what we're supposed to build, what we're not supposed to build, what we should be focusing on. But it's fun, and what's worked over the last couple of years is that triad, really bouncing ideas against each other, right? Kind of our core of what we do is with the integrators, I can't make a product that's going to take any more time for the integrator to do any work or integration in that building. I can't ask you to do any more than you're already doing. And then the results of it, those engineers better, back up that if I gave this to you or I gave this to an integrator or someone who's servicing a building or who owns a building, I can give this information and it's useful and it's correct, right? Is it statistically correct? Are we making sure we're giving you the right actions to take, right? You get all the way down the path, and then if you go to do something and we're like, it's not really what's wrong with the building, then, this isn't worth it. So a lot of different things, a lot of fun areas to disrupt, but it's fun. I mean, this is a great market to be in. There's not too many spaces that feel new and kind of challenging, right?
Well, Chris, you guys made remarkable catch-up progress. I mean, I'm looking at your website and I see you're members of Project Haystack. So you got into the committee the people that are writing software, and you got in deep in that regard. And it also shows on your website extraordinary Niagara expertise. So you got quite a staff that got themselves involved. I know that your other fellow that we had, what's his name? Your chief. Trying to find the other gentleman.
Is Chad?
Edit point. No, yeah, Chad. I looked at him at LinkedIn, and my goodness, he's got every certification in the books. So I mean, you guys quickly did your homework to get your source documentation in order, so that you could prove that you had that domain expertise in our world. So it's very impressive.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I can only kind of steer what we can steer. I think it's all about surrounding yourself with the right people, right? We have great integrators who bring wealth of knowledge. I mean, we have, and they're all different, right? We have some guys who have a vast experience in programming in Niagara. We have guys that are integrators that never use Niagara, right? And so you have to build on all those different types because that's the real world, right? And it's the same with our engineering staff. We got guys that are trained HVAC engineers that, they dreamed of being architects and then they did something else. And then we have guys who just, they were mechanical, electrical engineers and they got into build spec. And then we have some people that have 5 years experience and they're more, willing to adopt with new technologies. And then we have people that have, 20, 30 years experience. So they bring the meat of, I walk into a building and I can rattle off the 7 things that I see with my eyes, and I can hear the pump in the pump room, right? And it's like, let me get that brain into
Building whispers. Yeah.
But you need that to feed the engine. You just have a software platform that's great. But what does it do, right? And what does it do for you?
Well, yeah, let's talk a bit about that, because, I think one of the things with technology that's a little bit tricky is that if you, success almost leads to failure, meaning that, you start out with something, and then if the technology changes or the perception of how technology is used changing, you still have, a legacy that you have to support. So it's almost, in certain instances, I think maybe in your case, it's easier to start from scratch and build it from scratch. And, we hear a lot, and, there's a lot of conversation about analytics and data, and quite candidly, a lot of people, they buy the latest and the greatest, and they get all kinds of data, but they don't really know how to use it. But what's your view on analytics and data, and how do you guys use that view to support your software offer?
Yeah, and later on we could kind of dive into the product a little bit to kind of support some of this, but at the highest level, right? I mean, when you are deciding to find insights and use an analytical engine, right? You kind of have to start off by getting out a lot of data. You have to build on top of that, and then yes, you're using your charts and your graphs to kind of do a human root cause. Well, why is this high, or why is this? And you have some simple rules, and simple rules build on themselves to be more complex and just have more inputs, more changes, looking at parent-child. It starts just kind of growing and growing and growing. And then you can start doing things where now you can correlate them up and start giving what we kind of call those actions, right? And that's kind of where we are now. And that's why we're kind of making a big push of, we're building every day. We're a cloud-based analytics software that deploys every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks you log in and you're going to see something new. Sometimes it changes the way it looks and feel, and you're gonna hate it. A lot of software platforms that are out there, because you're used to one view. But that also allows us to be very nimble when we add new rules, or we add new reports, or we hear from our customers that, hey, I need stuff around this kind of equipment, or I need stuff around this specific type of building.
Well, Chris, you go, so you're really moving a lot of information quickly, but I think what you said something offline about edge and cloud. So when you're talking about how things change and how you evolve, I mean, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution, because like you said, incrementally you keep improving.
Yeah, let me share my my go-to soapbox slides. Yeah, so this is kind of generic in the AI analytics. So for the purpose of this podcast, let's call them insights and statistics, I guess, as a math guy. So I mean, to talk about analytics and how do you get to the end result? What's the end result in all this, right? Everyone's dream is what you can see at this top flag, automated command and control. Right? Being able to have something that can essentially run themselves, right? And so when you build a system like that, I don't care if it's for an autonomous vehicle, it's for stock market analysis, or it's for buildings. You kind of follow the same cake layers, as we call them. So the base cake, we call that from a building perspective, that's fault detection and diagnostics, right? In analytics, we call that anomaly detection. Essentially, I just need to know as much binary data of yeses and nos as I can, right? However, that gets boiled down to a yes or a no, right? Is something on? Is it off? Is it exceeding a threshold? Is it on for too long? Are all of its children too wide open? I mean, it can get kind of complex in that bucket, but you need that data, and you need that data to be, good data. You need data integrity, and then if you have that base of anomalies or faults, you can start building that second layer, which is the orange layer, which is the root cause and correlation. And that's when you can actually start solving problems, right? Now you can start saying, well, if these scenarios happen and this happens, then if I have enough data over a week or a month, I can say, you know what, this box or this piece of machinery or this system is underperforming because of this. And the data is pointing to that. It's the data is somewhat always right, as long as it's good data. And so then if you build that root cause and you exhaustively go through that and you model all the things you can think of, Now you can start dreaming of what that purple layer is, which is really the machine learning gets into play, right? Which essentially is just looking at the statistics of what's happened in the past, what's looking in the future, and where it might start finding a pattern. And now you're leveraging the world's technologies out there where I can set up a Bayesian network on Amazon in an hour and a half now, where 15 years ago I needed a team of devs to build that framework. There are software tools out there that are out every day that makes solving these problems a little easier. But if you're already at that level, you've already built the base 2 cakes. And that's not easy. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of data and a lot of this works and it doesn't, but then it works all these other times, but it doesn't these other 2 times. But as you build up this cake conceptually, now you can do predictive. And then of course, if you can do predictive, the flagstick of command and control is actually really trivial at the end, right? If all those things work, if that cake is just running perfectly, the computer machine can make a decision and you can trust it as strong as that cake is, right? So I always ask the question on these, is this is the path to smart buildings or this whole analytics and AI, is it an evolution or is it a revolution, right? Is it something that evolves over time, or is it something where it's like, we have this, plug it, and it just works, right?
So it's both then, huh? At first I was going to go with the evolution, but now I'm seeing that you made a couple of points offline to readdress them. Is that, you mentioned how this image right here, where the car with no driver, no hands on the driver, is the future, and how we, and the ones we're on the left side of this picture with the hands on the wheel, we can't make that jump sometimes. We have to make a revolutionary change of behavior to be able to accept the reality that there's a better way to do things, and that technology has proven itself, and that the AIs and the machine learning can outperform the humans, just like in autonomous vehicles and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the reality is it's probably a mixed bag of both, right? I mean, this is what we said before is, do you think that for the autonomous car, let's use a great example, everyone can relate to this. Do you not think that we have the systems in place for cars to be able to drive themselves with no wheel? I mean, you can talk about the test. You always ever hear about the failed test, but I mean, I almost got hit today, right? I mean, it's, when I think about my kids, I have 4 kids under the age of 10. And I'm sure they're going to, one of them is it's going to evolve to a point where they're going to buy a car that doesn't have a steering wheel. And I'm just going to look at him like, you're crazy. And he's going to look at me very logically and say, so you think that driving down the road at 80 miles an hour, 4 feet from a guy next to you, physically rack and pinion holding your 72 Charger, is safer than a computer system making millions of decisions and backed by its cake of analytics and knowing exactly what to do? And he'll be like, well, yeah, because it feels like it, because I'll be the old man.
Well, the crazy thing, my friend's a pilot, and he tells me about how they fly the plane for the first 30, 40 seconds, and then the computer takes over, makes 1 million computations a second, and then they take over in the last 50, 60 seconds when they land the plane, to your point. And but I think it's a throw. Eric he's playing soft on us, but he has a Tesla, and he has taken this thing out and let
I got to tell you guys, I drive much better than my Tesla. That's my story. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now I'm teasing, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I've got to have some relevance in the world.
Yeah. So when you got in it, did you take the hand off the wheel day one?
No. It was a while before I did that.
Evolution.
Yeah. And to be candid with you, I still don't do it often. If I want to scare somebody, I'll put it on and then turn and start talking to them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it just goes back into it's an interesting conversation because you can apply it to a lot of things. So let's apply it to buildings, right? If you build a building brand new and you had all the guys, all the different products that are out there that are really blazing this trail, you could probably get away with a building that's pretty autonomous. The technology is, we can do it, right, guys? Does that building talk to the next building? What do you do with the building that's half pneumatic still? And then really it comes down to the human element, right? Are the, how much leeway, we can already see that in controls, right? Different sequences get guys a little nervous. Like, I don't like that sequence because, so we've been fortunate with early on, as we were developing our software, we went out and kind of got, because we had engineers and we had integrators, we went and got kind of enterprise accounts that allowed us to be consultants, use our software, learn from it, but then also go out there in the world. And because of our chairman, Pete Hermanos, he owns the Carolina Hurricanes. We were able to go into that building. And so you talk about not touching controls. That's my ice, right? I mean, that's the basketball. That's a Garth Brooks concert. Like those
Right.
are, you're not touching those, right?
Right.
So again, very much an evolution. You want to use data to make better decisions, but ultimately you still need a human to kind of make those decisions for now.
Okay, so Chris, I want to hop in here. So two things right off the bat. First of all, I think this is definitely where it's going because it solves a major problem. Is Kenny and I, one of the trends we track is there are just so many people that are leaving the industry that are really great technicians and understand how to make this stuff work, i.e. the Tesla drivers, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it solves the problem when the Tesla drivers go and we don't have enough Tesla drivers to come in. You've got the Tesla. It sounds like you'll be able to automate the building in such a way that you're not going to need as many people to make the building run. Here is the $50,000 Tesla elephant in the room, which is this has got to be too expensive. I know most of our listeners are going, yeah, this sounds absolutely amazing, but I'm not going to be able to afford it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's something that comes up a lot before we even give a demo, right? I think that's something that, how do you play? And I think we got to talk a little bit about the market. But I mean, one of the things we're trying to be is we're just trying to be as transparent as possible and seeing what this market is accept. Anyone can go to our website at resolutebi.com. We update it all the time with our new marketing messaging. We have our pricing. We have, as much data as we can throw out about what we do and how we do it. Because I kind of see, my bigger vision for analytics, insights, just tools like this is I kind of see this market. There's kind of three segments within this. I think that there's tools at the top that are really, really good. There's tools that are all encompassing. You can use the analogy whether it's boiling the ocean or the full alphabet, right? They're the full soup. They have teams that come in. They'll do an assessment of your building. They'll measure the room size. They'll measure the horsepower of every machine. They'll document every machine. What's the inlet diameter of the VAV box? All that stuff. You boil that down after 6-8 months of a project, and you can. I mean, the insights you can. That from a data scientist, that's a dream scenario to have that data, right? And install those sensors and have that. And I think there's a spot, and that's pushing the envelope of what we can find in buildings. I think that there's other products out there that are really, really good as well that are basically open tools, right? Here's a framework for you to go and build your own library of rules, build your own reports, make this part of your business so that you can service those buildings or commission them or, whatever you're using it for. And they're extremely good, right? Those are great tools when you want to do edge analytics. I'd love to do, I said it earlier, I'd be happy to be on a podcast, and I completely play both sides, whether edge versus cloud. When you talk autonomous vehicles, I don't need the car calling the cloud to tell me to stop the car, right?
You can't. Yeah, it's just the time won't allow it.
Yeah, absolutely. I even as fast as you want to dream of the internet speeds, but on the cloud side, there's in that cake drawing I showed you, there's statistical pieces in machine learning and statistical pieces in the prediction that you kind of need the power of the cloud to do that kind of computation across a large data set in a large area. So it's the reality is you're going to need both. You're going to need devices to do that command and control and work on the edge, and you're going to need cloud to just constantly rebuilding the model, rebuilding what's possible.
Well, to your point, Chris, the cloud thing, now we know Elon Musk is putting up all his GPS satellites. Again, this pilot friend of mine, he saw them following them in succession. They're up around 60,000 feet. But as soon as that gets deployed and 5G really becomes a reality, then the cloud will become, every bit as important or more important, I guess. But the person we talked to recently about, the cloud edge discussion says that edge has to be where it happens because like the autonomous vehicle, there's no time for latency. It has to happen now. You have to know that that's a dangerous situation, hit the brakes. And if you don't hit it, the car does or vice versa,
Yeah, and for us in our market, right, I think that there's things in the building that you would want to know now and you can make decisions now. And then there's other things where you can see over time what's really going on and then apply it. And I think, again, it's a fun debate to have because there's not really a right answer. I think it's choosing the right tool for the job.
Well, I was just trying to say about your evolution. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that sample, I was talking about the market a little bit because we get asked like, who's your competitors? And I mean, I think on one hand, we talk about this kind of all-encompassing products that are out there, and then you also have the products that you can kind of build a lot. You can build whatever you want. We're kind of somewhere in the middle. Again, looking at our pricing, we have an opinionated library of rules and analytics that we apply. What we ask is that you map and tag and identify what's in the building as simple as you can. And then whatever you do, the system will best fit the analytics to what data set you have in your building. And then you can start producing the reports, the root causes, and the analytics, and you can start seeing insights into your building. And for us, we're hoping that is valuable for a price that is worthy. And then you can go. And I think, again, it's choosing the tool, what you're comfortable with and what you're trying to do.
And Chris, I want to hop in for our podcast listeners who might not be watching the video cast. So the screen we're looking at, and by the way, I encourage you to go to Chris's website. But just to give you guys an idea, select your plan and get started. No setup charges, no additional hardware to buy. Small option, $1,500 a year, annual subscription up to 1,500 points. Your base is 3,000 annual subscription up to 3,000 points. It goes all the way up to large, up to 10,000 at $7,000 a year. So that gives you an idea sort of where it plays. Because among other things, Kenny, it sounds like, and by the way, this does, you can use, it works. I think Niagara is the engine that drives it. I'll ask you to explain that, and Haystack's involved too. But Kenny, I think what it does is it really allows the smaller players, smaller buildings to have access to this horsepower and this information.
I want to revisit something you said earlier, Eric, real quick. And it was an oxymoron when you said the Tesla driver, because I thought that was kind of funny that Tesla is an autonomous vehicle when you're saying driver. So there is no Tesla drivers, but in there.
But my analogy was.
I was teasing.
Oh, gotcha.
I like that. I wrote that Tesla driver. I'm going to say that again in a post. But Chris, the thing that Derek's getting at is something that we toy with, on a daily or a weekly basis, where there's this race to the small space. In other words, a lot of things that you're saying are being done for these large projects that have the budgets and they can pay for everything because they have the consistent budget. They've got their monthly revenue and whatever else, they have the budget. But you guys have come up with a way to configure, and use in a single day. And then you have two specific products that we need to talk about. One's the Resolute Synergy and one's the Resolute Fusion. I mean, let's talk about that for, that's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Let me pop up my screen. I know when I hate watching videos, just staring at the screen sometimes. It'll be, yeah. So the way our product works, and I'll try to do this very light. Anyone can go to our website. You can click to schedule a demo. You can call us. We're just trying to get our brand out there. We're trying to get this in the hands of people listening. Again, because we move fast every 2 weeks, we're able to take, things we hear certain things, we listen, and we make changes, and we kind of keep that evolution approach in our products. So yeah, we have two products, right? So we call them Synergy and Fusion, as you can see on the screen. And all this again is on the website. Synergy is really the configuration tool. That's where we spent almost the last whole year, because we built our analytics engine a few years ago. We had that running. We started working on the root cause, which I'll show you, that shows up in our reports, which just basically takes all of those rules and then tries to bubble them up into something that you can take action on. And then of course you can graph, and because everything's unlimited trending, and those are kind of the commodities that everyone's doing. But the heart and soul is, how can I get that configuration down as easy as possible, right? And what I love is challenge us, right? I mean, let's do a demo. Let's try to connect to a Niagara supervisor or Jace you have, and let's see if we can get that data flowing as quickly as we say. Because we're also going to learn, right? If you have a pirated bay version of Windows or something, I mean, we got to figure that out, right? We can't test every scenario possible, and that's kind of the fun of what we're doing. And it's really as simple as, when you do the building configuration, you pull the points in, you map and tag them, and then you can start applying the rules and the reports, and then you can start going into our Fusion app. Our orange app is really where you see all the results of the your configuration of the rules engine. And so that's kind of like that's our package. That's the app. So again, they're all cloud-based, so you can reach them on any web browser or tablet, whatever you need to. Kind of talking about Niagara. So, you know, when we did this originally, we built some of our own Niagara modules that sat in the supervisor and pushed the data out and did all this stuff, and that was great. But again, what we started learning is I don't want to build another thing that's new. I don't want to add to something that you have to install or something that you have to put onto your box that you already have. And so we leverage the NHaystack connector for Niagara. We don't require you to use Niagara or Haystack tags. We'd like you to, because that would only help the process. But it's not a requirement. We really just use it to transmit the data. And you know, we're hearing grumblings that we're hoping that the NHaystack servlet, the module part of Niagara, will be part of the base Niagara going forward. That's kind of been rumors for a while. And then because the Haystack community is a great open source community, you know, we want to contribute back to that module so that, you know, when we see things that are broken in it, we can fix it and kind of give that back so others can use it to transmit data. We've been asked, you know, what we do with our analytics, can we take that data and push it back to another system? Absolutely. You know, again, we want to be part of these multiple choices someone has to apply a tool to a building and get insights. You know, everyone's got some different pros and cons of which one you would use for what application. So the real simple kind of quick one for the technical guys that, you know, this is a kind of a simple thing for everyone to understand, but you know, based on the Niagara connector, all we do is we have an open VPN connection that we bundle and create in our cloud. So it just is a one-click. You download it, you install that on your supervisor. That'll connect home, make a secure certificate VPN, and then we use the NHaystack to supply the data. On JACEs, you can't do the VPN as well, that one click just yet. So those JACEs would have to be open up over HTTPS. And these are things that we're learning and hearing about too. There's some great products that we're testing and trying. There's some great gateways out there that we've been working with to try to figure out other ways. And again, it's trying to use all that's out there in the market to better transmit data safely and securely. We got really lucky with our first customers that we started doing this early on, and when we built were hospital systems. So everything we do is under our SOC 2 compliance. So as a software company, we're very security conscious, and we have all the creds around our SOC 2 audits and everything. So that helps, right? Because as you're making, you know, when we come in, we want to make it light and easy, but we also want to make your building a little bit safer than maybe it was when you connect. And so that's kind of the connector. We also have, we worked with KMC. They have a great product called the Commander. It's an IoT gateway.
We're very familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a Commander, it's actually the easiest way to get data because we partnered with them where if you have a Commander, the setup in the app, and I'll show you when we get into the product demo, it's literally 6-character project ID. You press save and we have data syncing between their cloud and our cloud. And I think that's where I'm hoping to see more and more people, you know, and more companies start doing that where we're sharing the cloud to cloud connector and connection of data, right?
Not to throw a curveball into here, but you know, we're seeing a surge now of this MQTT protocol, and there's a couple of classes coming up in the industry. Does that have Ed Marwin called it the protocol for the cloud? Does that throw a wrench into anything, or are you just able to adapt to that?
No. So the way we do our connector, we're able to use any connector. And when you start saying things like MQTT to software guys, I mean, we're in heaven. That is a protocol that's been around.
I assumed that, but I just wanted to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are the thing that I love telling whenever we bring in new software developers, we talk about, you know, the building space, you know, software developers don't know the buildings. They're just kind of confused by it. And they're like, well, why is the connector so hard? You know, it's like in software, we've had HTTP for 30 plus years. We've had protocols that are known where if I have a protocol in software and I'm on IBM mainframe and you have a protocol and you're a Cisco whatever, those protocols work exactly the same on both. Like it is like law, right? And you get into buildings and you're like, well, your backnet isn't my backnet, which isn't your backnet. And it's like, I thought we were all the same. Why is this? And it's like, You start talking MQTT or anything that is just going to enhance it, then it makes it even easier, right?
Sweet.
Hey, because I think there's an MQTT driver for Niagara already too, so maybe that's an alternative to the.
Yeah, and we've been playing around with security. We've also been playing around with throughput a little bit, right? How quick is it versus others? What does it cost to do? How do you set it up? And then also just being mindful of, if someone's got a 3.8 system they're still straggling onto, I don't want to be a product that says, hey, I got all this that works, but you've got to get the latest N4. You're going to have to redo it. I want to slap it on and get some data, and then we'll evolve with you. If you upgrade the machine, well, you're going to get a better connector, or maybe it's a better way. But again, try not to make it where I'm requiring you to change the points, change the names, or do anything in that system.
Chris, this is fantastic. Anyway, give us a quick demo here.
Yeah, sure. So, and again, you guys can sign up online for a demo. We can do a demo of the product. When you sign up and you make a connection to your supervisor and get data flowing, the first 7 days are free. And then, once the data is flowing and everything's running, you can see the results of the reports and everything. And then I think, if you sign up for a demo and you get this through Controls Now in the next, 60 days, we'll give you 10% off that first year.
Whoa, hang on a second. I didn't even get to do the let's make a deal. That's awesome. So you're saying if they sign up with the demo and said Controltrends sent us, and then they actually buy the product in the next 60 days, they get a 10% discount on their first year subscription. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think,
man, that's sweet.
Wanting this in more people's hands to get the feedback and to understand, what is working and not working in that market, right? And making it a tool that you can use.
Chris, that's very generous. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. So I'll do a quick abbreviated demo of this to kind of show, I think one of the parts is that we're real. We actually do this. It's not vaporware. So going into the configuration, I'm showing a system here that I've connected. I have a connector. It's connected to a supervisor that has 4 buildings. It's like 18,000 points, I believe, in this system. And then, once you map them in, the quick and dirty is we need the tags on the equipment, and we need the tags on the points. And then you let the analytics engine start finding the analytics that it can apply, the rules that it can apply, right? Obviously, all of our tags that we do in our cloud are based off the Haystack tags, and we're constantly keeping that updated as the community grows and changes. It's all about giving us more information. If you tell me more about the building, you're going to unlock more rules that can apply, right? If you tell me what parent on the air side a VAV box has, I can use that to do more expansive rules. I can do that to do more root cause correlation, but it's not a requirement, right? It's how much you can give me about the building, and then trying to get the results to do something that you didn't know, or provide you insights you didn't already have. So the clever thing we kind of did around our mapping and tagging is, we found that you get everything in the sun when you're hooking up to a system, right? And so what we've done here, and this is the classic demo version, that I had a perfect integrator, and they had if you look here on the right, they had 753 zone temperatures, and the name in the BAS was zone temp. Oh, that was so sweet of them that they didn't. They actually made it a legible name. But the idea is that if you group them up, if that was IN6, I have an example of 1,000 VAV boxes that had IN6. It's not a requirement to go change that in the building. Come in, and when you have the data in our app, now you're working in our cloud app, and I can easily go and change what point set of tags I want on that, right? And we're using the Haystack guidelines to the group of tags. So I say that's a zone temperature, right? And once I make that change, that's going to change all 753 of them. And as you start this is where you really work in our app. This is where we say it can be done in a couple hours. You start working through this list of points. And then what happens in the background is our rules engine is constantly trying to find what now matches what you've just told me about the building. If all you have is zone temperatures, well, then you're only going to get a handful of rules on each VAV box. Right? Then you start adding stuff around the boiler. You start adding it around the chiller. All of a sudden, more and more rules can be applied. We call those candidates in our system. So in this example, there would be 5,000 candidates, and I would select them all, and I would apply them. And now I've just applied 5,000 rules to those 4 buildings. And now we can jump into Fusion and start seeing, well, what is that telling me? Right? Let's go to work. Let me see what that's doing. Quick question we always get here is, well, can I write my own rules? We do 2-week sprints. We do have some computed points, and we have some advanced features that allow you to write your own logic. But again, in the quick and dirty of how can I just make this something you can use on your building in a couple hours and start seeing what's happening. You can come into our rules. Let's do what's a good one? The deadband's always a good one, right? So what you're able to do is when you bulk apply these rules, all of our defaults parameters of all of our rules are based on ASHRAE 90.1 and ASHRAE high performance. So the deadband example, right? It's going to look at, and it's going to use the ASHRAE 5 degrees. Not everyone loves that, right? You might say that's a little too noisy for me. I need that to be, 2 degrees. You can come in here and everything we do, you can do individually or you can do in bulk, right? So when I can make a change, I can say, you know what? I want all of these to be 2 degrees instead of 5 degrees. I apply it, and immediately those rules now are going to use a 30-minute delay in a 2-degree deadband instead of a 5-degree, right? So having those knobs to quickly be able to adjust. And then really not getting too much in, and we can do a deeper demo for those that want it. We have a lot of pages around auditing of the points that are coming in, because we believe that you have to monitor the data integrity as much as you have to monitor everything else. And then really the end of it is down to our reports. We're coming out with new reports constantly, and these reports start encompassing our root cause. So we take all those analytics we've applied, and now we can bubble them up into something that maybe you can take action on. So quickly for this one, I'll go into, you can see all the results of the analytics. That's great. But really, it boils down to a weekly or monthly report. Let's do monthly because it usually shows a little better data. Let's go monthly. Let me look at this guy. Right? So these are automatically run. So again, after you configure your points, there's nothing left to do. You've applied the rules, the machine's running. You can come in here and start seeing the results of it. So do you guys see this pretty clearly?
Yes.
Right? So now I can look at it as, this is a simple VAV scorecard. So this goes through and it looks at all of the VAVs that I have in this building. I have a score on them that's based on zone temp, airflow, damper position, some parent stuff. Again, all those rules we applied, I could go into detail. I can show you all the charts and graphs, but really I want to get down to why are my 5 VAV boxes, why are these the 5 worst ones? Well, there's some root cause, right? Maybe your minimum airflow set point's too high. Maybe your sensor seems to be inaccurate, right? Now I'm giving you poignant checklists to go and do something in the building. This is where we spend a tremendous amount of time, and this is kind of where we see this evolving, right? Charts and graphs turning into actions and answers. And like you saw on the list there, we have reports for ORs, we have them for air handlers, we have them for controller performances, for actuator throw. I mean, you start getting a bunch of engineers in a room, and they come up with enough reports to last 2 years of development, right? They're pretty excited to start building this stuff out. So,
you said something real quick, and I might be off topic just a little bit. You said 2-week sprints, and then you said earlier how you make improvements and enhances. Is that really your style? So everybody else has problems getting things done. You guys work increments of 2 weeks to make enhancements? That's extraordinary.
Yeah. So, that's that's kind of normal software. So any software company out there, unless you're really big, you start actually doing deployments like live, like Facebook and Netflix, they do live deployments. What we do is every 2 weeks, the devs are working on a bunch of code. That code goes into a staging, it gets QA'd, and then that goes into production. And so like clockwork, every 2 weeks, we are deploying a new version of both of our apps. And that could include more rules, more reports, better graphs, better graphics. We're always constantly trying to improve every aspect of our app. And you'll see that. And so if you say, hey, I need more rules on chilled water beams, well, they're coming. And I can tell you that they'll be on this date. And then when you log in on that Friday, you'll see, oh, I've got 50 chilled water beam rules I can apply to this building. Great. You press click, you apply them, you start seeing the results of them. Right?
Cool. So I tell you what, you are really, really on the right path here, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming in and doing a demo and talking with us today. Can we get you to come back on the show maybe in a couple of months?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just post on what's happening. So let's remember, Chris, thank you so much for the time. Remember, if you sign up, get a demo in the next 60 days and buy the product, Chris is graciously, if you say Controltrends sent us, has graciously offered to give you 10% off of your first year's subscription rate. So, Chris, thank you so much. ResoluteBI.com, is that the website?
Correct. Yeah. Actually, we'll change it. If you mention Tesla driver, you'll get 10%.
Okay.
There you go, brother. Well, what do you think of Chris, man? You and I both dabbled in the world of analytics, and we've seen them all, or most of them, at least the people in our industry. And Chris sort of brings a fresh perspective. How do you think he's going to do here?
I think they're going to do remarkably well. They're going to get their share of market blood, that's for sure, because of the, you know, I just want to bring something back, to talk about real quickly. And that was that, about 5 or 6 years ago, we wondered where Silicon Valley, or that what Silicon Valley represented. That was a new perspective into our industry, and slowly but surely, we did passive logic last week, and now Resolute Building Intelligence. My goodness, is this refreshing that we've got a whole new launch of innovative products and solutions that we can be a part of. Because as we saw our industry be disrupted and shrink with components and the architecture flattened, and the opportunities to sell as a distributor where they were parts, now we're getting really and truly pushed into the smart section of the solution side of the equation, where we do still have a very important role to play. And distribution is going to, long live distribution.
Well, absolutely. I think so, Kenny. And well, listen, hats off to Richard Newberry and the team at KMC. I mean, the fact that, they've gotten together with these folks, and you can use the commander as a way to pass this information through is, I think, again, a testament to how, KMC is just continually, staying on top and staying out front.
Yeah, you're right. And we again, we got to be a part of that, and saw behind the curtains of how Richard Newberry and his team were the first people to partner with Dell and IBM back when it was not fashionable, and it was definitely a departure from the standard vendor's approach towards the market. It was that collaboration.
I think this story, talking about fashionable, I think this story bears repeating, especially for, our younger listeners, about, the power of perseverance. And if you haven't heard the story before, it's like this. Richard Newberry, the CEO at KMC Controls, really sees that Silicon Valley and smart building controls are going to merge. So he goes and starts calling on Dell and IBM and Intel and all these folks. And, sort of to no avail, right? And then was it Dell who originally contacted him
Dell.
back? Yeah. So the story goes that after, months and months of persistence, Dell calls up and goes, "Hey, we lost this guy's card, but he's been trying to get us to talk to him. He's a really well-dressed guy." They go, "Oh, Richard Newberry, that was it." So appearances matter. And as I like to say in sales, be memorable. So if everybody else is wearing a suit and tie, then maybe you wear a t-shirt. If everybody else is wearing t-shirts, wear a suit and tie, but be memorable. And Richard was memorable. And then, the partnership with Intel and Dell began. So again, Richard Newberry, one of our favorite people in the industry, a great leader. And KMC, like so many of the companies in our industry, really make great products. So KMCcontrols.com, check them out too.
Indeed, Eric.
Well, Kenny Smyers, I tell you what an education we've gotten this week. So good stuff.
Yeah, Eric, again, in these periods of with the pandemic, just settling in around us, the important thing is to maintain a good, positive disposition. We will come out of this. It will work. Don't expose yourself. You don't have to, of course. Take care of, look in on the people that you love, and you might not think of them very often, but the neighbors and people in your community might need help and don't have the means to reach out. So go look for somebody to help, but don't touch them. Maintain your social distance.
Yeah. And for me, my sort of silent form of protest against this horrible virus is I will not allow my facial hair to grow back until this thing is done. So please,
yeah,
get your
I think it looks
sensors
sharp.
out.
I think you shaved about 5 years off. Hey.
Well, hope so. My wife doesn't like it so much, but I told her, man, until the coronavirus is done, shaving every day, man. Going to help support the razor blade people. And the shaving.
Well, that's interesting. Like most hockey teams, nobody shaves until they get out of the playoffs or win the Stanley Cup. You're going in the other direction.
Like I said, one of the keys to sales and marketing is be memorable. Do something different than other people do. So, all right, buddy. With that, man, a very, very special thanks to our guest and good friend Luis Melgares for the great knowledge he shared, and also to Chris Hallenday from Resolute. We appreciate both those guys and their contribution to our industry. We appreciate you, our community. Hey, stay safe out there. And remember, be bold, stay in control, wash your hands.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed. This is not a bad way to do this.